Hey, welcome back. We're going to finish up the Gospel of Mark, and then we're going to be going over, briefly the chapter 13 PowerPoint from the Howard textbook, giving the context of Acts of the Apostles and the Pauline letters. All right, so let's go back to it. So, he is in Jerusalem. He kind of came in, tried to get arrested, kind of made a big show. Still hasn't been arrested, right? But 2 days before Passover, the chief priests and scribes were looking for a way to arrest Jesus and kill him, meaning the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Okay? Um, Judas, who was one of the 12, he was one of the 12 disciples, went to the chief priests in order to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. And honestly, if it hadn't been for Judas, Jesus might not have been arrested at all because everyone was so scared of him. So even though no one would want to be Judas, Jesus needed to be arrested in order to be put on trial and then crucified and then killed. So um, so that's kind of how how it's orchestrated. Um, 2 days, when it is Passover, he actually sits down and has his Last Supper, and he says, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." And they said, "No, that's not true." But it's okay. He said, "It is one of the 12, for the Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to the one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." So it's like he's saying it has to happen, but it sucks to be you, Judas, because you are betraying me. His Lord's Supper, or the Last Supper, really is a Passover Seder. So, one of the ways that competing religions tend to diminish their neighboring competing religions is just to appropriate things from that other religion. So, in this case, the Passover Seder, the Passover meal, is the most sacred meal in the Jewish calendar. And what they're doing is taking it and just calling it the Lord's Supper or the Last Supper, basically making it part of the process of the Passion Week and diminishing its importance with regards to the Jewish celebration. So that happens a lot, actually. It's not just Christians who do it. And, a lot of people just take neighboring ideas and just, accommodate and appropriate it, and then it becomes part of their religion. So, he has the Last Supper where the bread and the wine become the body and blood of the Christ. So by consuming the bread and wine, this is kind of the most sacred ritual, the communion. You become part of the global Christian community by the consumption of the body and blood of Christ. Peter denies him, and he's going to deny him 3 times before the night is through. Jesus goes into the Garden of Gethsemane, which is outside of Jerusalem, and he prays. And the key thing here when he says, um, Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want. This really indicates Jesus's humanity because even though Jesus has been saying, I need to die, this is what's going to happen, in a somewhat cavalier fashion, like he's not affected by it. He is. And why? Because he's human. I mean, we all sometimes forget about the humanity of Christ. He's just like us. He's just a human person that knows he's going to die. What would you do the night before you're going to be put on trial and crucified and tortured? Wouldn't you be calling out to God and saying, "Hey, is there any way this can happen?" Right? And that's basically what he's saying here. Hey, I know this is supposed to happen, but if there's any way, not what I want, but what you want, if there's any way that I don't have to go through this tomorrow, that will be awesome. So the editors actually wanted to remove this part too, but I really think it's wonderful that it's in here because it really shows the humanity of Christ as well. Just like it was him on the cross crying out, it was him on the cross suffering, he's not just the Son of God, he is also the Son of Man. So, once again, he gets mad at his disciples because they're just snoring away and not keeping watch, clearly not doing the job that they are supposed to. Then they come into the garden and arrest him, and Judas comes and says, "The one I will kiss is the man, arrest him." So they come up and kissed him. Um, Jesus says, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit?" He's saying, "Oh, I see, you came with swords and clubs and stuff because you thought I was a zealot." A bandit is the zealot, the group of Jews that fought back against Roman and Greek rule. And Jesus is like, "Oh, you thought I was a zealot. That's why you're coming to arrest me. Trust me, if I wanted to kill you, I would have." Because he said, "Day after day I was with you in the temple. You didn't arrest me." I'm not. I'm not a zealot. Though I may preach kind of insurrection ideas like the kingdom of God is going to come here, I'm not a zealot because I'm not a man of violence. But apparently they believed that he was. Then he goes in front of the council, the Sanhedrin council, because the policy back then was you would have to be tried by your own people, in this case Jews, before you go to the Roman government, right? So in this case, the Sanhedrin council has to convict him first before it moves on to the Roman rule. So in this case, if you read this carefully, they were about to let him go because there were all these conflicting testimonies. But then, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" And remember, before this point, whenever someone asked him, he would say, "I don't know, who do you think I am?" Or "Keep it on the down low," or "Be quiet, don't say that." But he takes this opportunity to basically convict himself. So when the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus says, "I am." And on top of that, I'm going to rub it in a little bit. "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." So not only am I the Messiah, I'm going to be in heaven next to God, coming on the cloud. So it's essentially sealing the deal and making sure that he is convicted. So he says, "Well, why do we need witnesses? You just convicted yourself." So he is convicted, and Peter denies him one more time. Then he brings him to Pilate. So you kind of have to be double convicted by your own people and then brought to Pilate. Pilate says, "Hey, don't you have any answers? See how many charges they bring against you?" Almost as if Pilate's looking for an opportunity to not cause trouble. Like, aren't you going to say anything in your defense? Because if you said, "No, I didn't say that," maybe I'd let you go, right? But Jesus made no further reply, meaning, "Nope, I'm not going to say anything, so you have to uphold the previous conviction. You have to go with what the Sanhedrin Council says." So Pilate is amazed. "Wow, you're not going to say anything in your defense? Okay, you're convicted," right? So Jesus has to make sure that he is convicted in order to be crucified. He even has one more opportunity to be let go, where Pilate makes the crowd choose either Jesus or a zealot, Barabbas, right? And Barabbas was someone who was one of those bandits, right? Of course, the people are not going to um, release Barabbas. He's the one who was a leader in the insurrection and killed a bunch of Romans in defense of the Jews. So honestly, though some people say Jews, killed Jesus, that's not true. If you're a Jewish crowd and you're forced with these two choices, you're going to have to pick one. Either Jesus the troublemaker or that guy who killed a bunch of Romans. You're going to pick this guy to be released. You're going to get Barabbas to be released because you don't like Jesus anyway. Who's really killing Jesus? It's the Romans. The Romans are forcing you to make that choice. The Romans are the ones that are torturing Jesus. The Romans that are tying him up on the cross. That's a Roman torture. That's a Roman death. The Romans are the ones that bring him up and leave him up on the hill. So if you ever hear anyone saying Jews killed Jesus, that's not true. The Jews were Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. And the Jews were powerless in the face of the Roman governance, right? So it's really Romans who kill the Jews, but it's the Roman church that tried to publicize the idea that the Jews killed Jesus because they don't want the Roman Catholic Church to also be the murderers of their Lord 300 years earlier. So it's a little manipulation of the story. Okay, so they say crucify Jesus. The soldiers whip him. They put up a little sign and say, "Hail, King of the Jews." I don't know if you've ever seen the INRI on top of the cross. That stands for Jesu Nazare Regum Judea, or Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. So it's a little bit of a thing. Then they put him up on the cross. The crucifixion ends up being a very slow process, a slow death. You essentially, your heart starts to weaken, and it starts, instead of pumping fluids through, it starts to back flush fluids into your lungs, and you essentially drown in your own fluid. So it's very painful, very torturous, and it's awful. When it was noon, and because he was beaten and tortured, normally it takes about 5 to 7 days for someone to die on the cross. But because he was tortured, it only took him 2 or 3. At 3 o'clock, he cries out, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Because he's human and he's being tortured and it's painful and it's awful. He's basically saying the equivalent of WTF, like, what is this? This is terrible. And he gives a loud cry and breathes his last. And then the world around him kind of reacts as a reaction against this death, right? Then Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph and Salome, they are waiting in order to dress the body. Okay? So they put his body in linens, and Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph sees where the body is laid in order to come back and dress the body the next day. When the Sabbath was over, they bring spices in order to anoint the body, and when they go, they see that the stone had already been rolled back. And so this is actually in a particular area of Jerusalem called the Tomb of the Rock, it's called. I actually left my camera there once, and I came back at the end of the day and it was still there. And my friend pointed out, who would steal a camera literally where Jesus was buried, which is true. So as they went, they saw a young man dressed in white sitting on the side. And that is obviously Jesus resurrected, but they didn't know. So he said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised, and he is not here. Go tell his disciples and Peter that he's going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him." So they went out, fled for the tomb, and they didn't say anything to anyone because they were afraid. Now, this is ironic. This is Mark putting a little ironic ending to his gospel, because one of the things that Jesus had been saying, and you'll notice this as you read the gospel, one of the themes of Mark has always been, shh, don't tell anyone, shh, don't tell anyone, or keep that a secret. So throughout the gospel, Jesus has always been making, who he is as the Messiah or the Son of God, a secret, right? That's only between him and the disciples. Finally, at the end, he said, "Go tell people." Right? Go tell people that I've been resurrected. Go tell the disciples. And then the irony is they went out and said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Right? So it's almost as if Jesus is going up to heaven saying, my disciples are so frustrating. They never listen to me. And so that's kind of Mark's little twist, ironic ending, that when he wants them to say stuff, they don't. Right? Because the editors, obviously, this can't happen. This couldn't have happened, because if they said nothing to anyone, no one would know that Jesus was resurrected, and then no one would be a Christian because no one would know about this, right? So what other editors have done was add this extra information. That's why it says the longer ending of Mark, right? They either added this part or this longer ending, but someone came along afterwards and added, no, they went out and told people, because otherwise it's impossible. We would not even have Christianity if they truly went out and told no one, right? So that's the ending. They added an ending to the Gospel of Mark, and the themes of Mark are really manifested. I hope you paid attention to these videos where I pointed those out. I obviously didn't go over the Acts of the Apostles PowerPoint, so I will do that on the next one. Okay?